settle in. I'm just going to ring it once. I'm already taking a deep breath, so just to invite you, um, yeah, to let yourself take a deep breath if there is one there, and just yeah, come into the space. So here comes the bell. And as you notice your breathing, you really don't have to do anything to change it. As you notice it, just also notice every point of contact that your body has with any kind of support. The chair, the sofa, the floor. And let your body really get the message. Let it receive the message. I have all the support I need. I don't have to hold myself up here. And I also invite you, I imagine most of you have pictures and colors and things you've chosen for the spaces that you live in, to imagine that the energy of where you live also supports you, because if you're a practitioner, you've been bringing the energy of practice into your living space. So just literally feel the support of your own space. And then to think of the support of space itself, because none of us would be here if it weren't for space. And in whatever way you can, to have the idea that, oh, I can rest back into space, actually. I can do that. I can really rest back into space. So really what I'm inviting you to do is definitely connected to this Tara, which is to feel the different levels of support that we have in all the different realms of being, space and form, and the subtle energies kind of in between and all around. So then I'm just going to invite you to open your eyes and come back into from wherever you went. And maybe you could, it's really nice that you can look around the gallery, you can see who's here with us. That's kind of fun. So we're also supported by this Sangha, and it's pretty widespread across the world. So that's really wonderful. So we're meditating tonight with and on the red influential Tara. And I realized, because I have been teaching this for a long time to small groups where I live. And so I've been looking back at the notes from all the years that I've taught it, and I realize every time there's something different, which reminds me of this idea that the teachings are endlessly emanating. There's just no limit to them. There's no end to them. There's probably no beginning to them, but they're endlessly emanating, which means that they're also going to be emanating inside of you. So new ideas, new insights, new curiosities are also going to show up inside of you, which will be, there's this idea of the inner teacher. This is something Sogyal Rinpoche wrote about, which I really love, that we have an inner teacher that follows us from one lifetime to the next, to the next, to the next. And that inner teacher really wants the best for us. And then one of the things he said is, if you ever in a lifetime you meet an outer teacher that is the perfect reflection of your inner teacher, then that is the opportunity of countless lifetimes. So, one of the things I'm just going to ask you to think about is when you call in this circle of care, these are your refuge teachers, your helpful ancestors, the lineage teachers. Are some of them reflections of your inner teacher? And, Tara, this visualization, this practice we do is a reflection of Tara inside of us. So it's very important to ponder these things. And what I hope is that when you do ponder it, and I don't mean think about it so terribly rational, but sort of feel your way into it, if that brings you some joy. This idea, there's this, Martin Wilson loves to say, Tara is called the mother of all the Buddhas. And since we are all destined to become Buddhas, that means she's our mother too, with all the intimacy and love that implies. She's pulling for us, right? She's really rooting for us, as is our inner teacher, and as have many of our outer teachers also. So I think what I'm going to do is just kind of keep referencing where the sensation of joy can arise in the practice itself, in the elements of the practice. And so one thing I want to do that's related to someone that I think may be a teacher for all of us, which is His Holiness. So I hope you all can see this book cover. Can you all see it? The Book of Joy, Desmond Tutu and His Holiness. I mean, look at those two guys, I mean, just look at the love and the happiness and the joy as they're looking at each other. And here's the back of the book. So it's been a while since I read this book. I can tell you that I thoroughly enjoyed it, but I think one of the things is, His Holiness says the ultimate source of happiness is within us. And I think that's really true. And that's why we do this practice, because we're really looking to locate and settle into that inner source of happiness. But it sure doesn't hurt to have people like this, where we can really observe their joy in their own teachings, but also in their exchange with each other. And along those same lines, maybe y'all can see this. I know there's probably some glare. Can you see it? So this is His Holiness, and this is my beloved Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi, Reb Zalman. May his memory be for blessing. And this meeting took place over 25 years ago. If any of you all have ever read the book, The Jew and the Lotus, it's about His Holiness inviting these 11 rabbis to come to Dharamsala and talk to him about preserving a culture and a spiritual practice in exile. He figured the Jews had 2,000 years of experience with that they might have something they could teach him. So anyway, it's a wonderful book, and Reb Zalman is certainly one of my in my circle of care. So I love this picture because once again, it's like the one of His Holiness and Desmond Tutu. You can see the joy that is in their faces as they're looking at each other. So again, as you're thinking about your teachers tonight, try to feel your way into if that brings some joy to you. So then what I want to say is, I always want to say everything first, so that makes it difficult because you can't say 15 things at the same time. I want to mention this, which is kind of the overall arc of this teaching tonight, so this comes from the tarot cards, and it's also in the book, but for me, as I really studied and practiced this tarot over a long time, I sort of came with this idea through joy and laughter. She helps you clarify your motivation and act with pure intention in the world. So there you have the element of joy. This idea of motivation, of course, is the ultimate bodhicitta, the bodhisattva motivation to wake up in order to be of benefit to all beings, and then acting with pure intention. So I'm going to try to, let that be the thread that runs through this teaching tonight, and try to link it back into the different elements of the practice. Okay, that's one beginning. The next beginning is, and we were talking about these wonderful tech hosting people that are here, Deanna and Mary and Karen, before you all came on, that the importance of actually including everything, that you can't really have a full joy if you're not including everything. So this idea of no part left out, no part left behind, right? So joy doesn't mean we repress the not so good stuff or the things we're really worried about. And so I just want to mention up front, and I'm going to say these few things, and anybody who wants to mention anything else, you can either put it in the chat box or just unmute yourself and say it. But sort of on the top of my list of concerns, and to kind of put in this practice space for benefit, of course, is Afghanistan, everything that's going on in Afghanistan and all the various people. Yeah, that's a big one. And then there's Haiti in the wake of this horrible storm, right? And then there's the Delta variant surging, many people being sick, people dying again, healthcare workers being incredibly discouraged and exhausted. And that's just in the United States. So it's happening all over the world. So I think to just have this open space for that's what's happening. And I think, again, everybody that's involved, that we don't scapegoat the non-vaccinated people, and we don't become careless because we are vaccinated. I mean, there's just so many elements to this thing, and there's so much suffering involved in it. So yeah, I just wanted to lift that up. And then thank you, Shona, the fires on the West Coast. So those are if anybody else has a large collective thing they want to put in the practice, maybe you could put it in the chat box, or as I said, just say it out loud. And then I also want to encourage you, because the energy of this practice, it really doesn't matter which Tara we're doing. We really are. It's all based on this deep wish to wake up for the benefit of all beings, that all beings would have this wonderful non-dual happiness. So any practice we do is going to benefit anybody. So if there are actual people that you're concerned about, please put them in the chat box, because, people will read through them, and just having their name and their issues, as Elizabeth Doyle just put in there, brings it into our space. It brings it into the energetic space of the practice. So let me talk about some of these practice elements, and then open up those elements a little bit. So starting with the praise, I praise the one who spreads the supreme joy and garlands of the light which shine from her diadem, who burst out laughing with a joyous exclamation, Tutari, placing the demons and worldly gods under her power. Well, we could meditate on that for a very long time. So one comment I want to say is, the word Tutari in Sanskrit actually can mean supreme joy. All these Sanskrit words can mean so many different things. So, and obviously I am not an encyclopedia, so I don't know all the different things, but I'll tell you what I do know, which is it's the supreme joy that comes from actually experientially understanding shunyata, emptiness, or another way of saying that is the interrelatedness of all being. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if this happens to y'all. It's like when I read articles about fungi and those amazing networks and all this amazing connectivity in the natural world, it just makes me laugh. It makes me happy. So you may have your own moments and experiences where you see something or feel something, you're just in something. And that interconnectivity becomes like a felt sensation and not an intellectual idea. So one way I think that can bump into humor, like a more relative on this level humor, is I think in our lives, whether it's our personal life or personal issue, or it's these big collective issues that we're so concerned about, sometimes we can really feel like, I should be doing this, I should be doing this, I should be doing this, I should be doing all kinds of things. And you begin to feel personally responsible for so many things. And, that if that goes too far, you can become very unhappy. So it's really interesting that the landing on this idea of the interconnectedness of all being. And if you're sort of wanting to take a humorous approach to yourself, you could say, maybe you could give that a rest. There's this vast, vast, vast network of beings and causes and conditions, and you're a really tiny little part of it. So, kind of just relax. And then on the other hand, because we are part of that tremendous, really incomprehensible web of interconnectivity, then what we actually do does matter. And so the doing of a small thing matters. And I think when we get caught up in feeling inadequate because we can't do enough about the really big things, and we've kind of lost sight of this, the meaning of Tutari, or this joy or emptiness, we can really kind of degrade the beauty and the benefit and the goodness of what the things we actually do. So I think, this is one of those places where taking that sort of seriously, right? Like the small stuff actually matters. And thinking about holding that in awareness, like not letting that slip out of awareness. And so if there's something you do, some small way in which you connect with somebody, and in that connection, you can feel some kind of joy arising. It's like the person, you can see it benefited them in the moment, or it brought some sweet kind of connection between you and that person. It's really a good thing to take a moment and take that in. Actually just sort of receive it, this exchange that's gone back and forth. And in the moment that you do that, you can offer it up. You can say, you can bring that intention into that moment and say, can I just offer this out for the benefit of all beings? So this is this wonderful place where it's an interesting paradox, not taking myself too seriously, not feeling responsible for everything, and also saying, oh yeah, but you know what I do matters. And I'm going to add to that this intention of paying attention to these small things when they happen and offering it up. So yeah, I just I don't know if you guys can. I'll tell you one story. I think I did put this in the book, but I love this story. But if you can, while I'm telling this story, if you can think of a moment where you know you were just kind of going way down that taking yourself seriously road, which is really so unpleasant in the end, and then something humorous happened to break it, and you were actually able to laugh at yourself, but in a good way, not in any kind of self-critical way, but in a really good way. Um, so here's one story about that. This was many years ago, sitting in the shrine room in Zolikon and listening to this teacher, Gonzo Rinpoche. This brilliant man, you know, he's just, and his English was like, not only did he speak, you know, perfect English, but he really got all the slang too, which was kind of fun. But anyway, so he kind of got the problems that Westerners had. And so he's giving over this teaching, and everybody's just looking at him, you know, with big eyes and taking notes of everything he said, myself included. And then he just sort of pauses and he looks at us. He said, you know, he said, there are those of us who will give you the teachings, others will give you the exams. And in that moment, I thought, yeah. It reminded me of, and again, these are really fond memories of Ram Dass coming to North Carolina. My God, I was so young. He was so young. This is a long time ago. Standing up on this stage in Memorial Auditorium, just walking back and forth teaching. He said, so if you think you're on the verge of enlightenment, my recommendation to you is to go home and spend a week with your parents. So, you know, the whole room just like, I mean, those are just wonderful moments, you know, when you can really laugh at yourself and feel like all the people around you, that everyone is laughing together. There's no kind of put down in any of this. So I just invite you to think of those kind of moments. So I think that, you know, this is the only emanation of Tara. And honestly, there are not so many. I mean, I don't know, because I'm not an encyclopedia again, but this idea of imagining an enlightened Buddha just laughing raucously, it's not called up in too many different places. And the fact that the praise even says she bursts out laughing, wow. I mean, that's really fun to think about. And then it says she places the demons and worldly gods under her power. So, okay, here's a moment where you guys, if you will, can break in and say a thing or two. Like, what is a demon? I mean, what is a demon and what is a worldly god, right? What's a demon for you? I mean, yes, Kylie.
Hi, a demon for me is pernicious self-hatred, like conditioning that I received from both of my parents, which I have practiced my whole life until now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a big demon.
Yeah, it's been huge, and it's gone.
Oh, good.
Yeah, well, it comes back, but
Well,
I'm learning how to not go down the story of it, like you just said, I'm actually doing Adyashanti's 30-day wake up and learning how to come into my heart. My heart has been guarded my whole life, and I've known, had this granite around, but it's starting to go. So I'm learning how to see from my heart and be from my heart, and it's wonderful. So thank you.
That is wonderful. Thank you. That's a great example. Does anybody else have one? Elizabeth?
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Okay. It's so funny. I was thinking of this the other day, and I was like, well, what would a demon be? Or, what? And I was thinking so immediate, but then I thought, wow, it's beyond the immediate, but it's like the media that's stolen my father's mind, or, it's that, but it's also, I feel like there's so many people that haven't known joy, or like that have passed away without feeling that sense of like presence enough in life, and maybe just went off, and or maybe they've harmed others more than created joy in their life, and so maybe they're out there in the past life. Those would be the demons for me.
Okay. Well, I think, there are lots of different ways of thinking about that. Some people think about, say, the healed ancestors and the unhealed ancestors. I don't know if that's kind of what you're talking about. That people who left here in pretty bad shape, and it's not clear what kind of shape they're in now. Yeah, and it really is wonderful to think about sending healing energy to them that doesn't involve asking them to come into our sphere. I think that's pretty important. So, can anybody give an example of what you think is a worldly god?
Consumerism.
Yes.
Money.
White supremacy.
Yeah.
Is a worldly god always a explicitly sort of negative manifestation?
That's a good question, and probably not. I think the worldly gods are not really thought of as being enlightened, but seems like they could also be benign. What do you think? What's your thought about that?
I was just thinking about sometimes there are like meaningful attachments in the world that help us, I think, process conditions and come to a deeper understanding of causes, and teach us practices that can to resolve those particular things, and or at least have at hand. But I've been sitting with like those positive experiences that I've had, but also in the past how there's sometimes this inability to let go of that and like learn, be willing to expand from that. So to me, that's always felt like sort of a worldly good, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe being attached to an experience instead of just letting it be that and letting it go and letting the next one come. Yeah. I think one thing for me that's really helpful about thinking of demons and worldly gods, I mean, I do think it's fun to think about it. And probably there are lots of places you could read different things about it. But when you get to the mantra, Taritu Taritu Sarwa Mara Loka Vasham Kursoha. So Mara is the Sanskrit word for demon. And the mantra is really saying that Tara actually influences the demons and the worldly gods and brings them under our influence, but really that's under the influence of our Tara nature. So, the word Mara literally does mean demon. And when you look at, what are the maras: death, negative emotions, the 5 aggregates, etc. One of the teachers that I really love a lot really talked about the mara of distraction possibly being the most difficult to get a handle on. And it seems like to me that the way you all, which is very helpful, the way you all are describing your sense of what a demon or a worldly god is, that either one of them is like a distraction. It's really pulling us away from resting in this deeper, deeper, deeper awareness. So yeah, I like the idea that that this idea of really deeply understanding shunyata, or emptiness, or interconnectedness, can help us deal with these distractions. And I also think, Kylie, what you said is, yeah, well, it comes back. And, and if you look at the Buddha's awakening story, he defeats the big Mara and all the Maras in the story of his awakening. But, he teaches for 40 more years and Mara's always showing up. So that really lets us know, hey, this is not a one-time deal. And I think it was Hafiz who wrote this poem, probably in the 10th, 11th, 12th century, that said, it's always a great, what did he call it? Problem for people who think all the 10,000 demons who've lived under their beds their whole lives have packed their bags and gotten up and left and gone away. Something like that, which is really like, oh yeah. So, and there's a little humor, in this world of dealing with the demons. So, I think right now, because there's so much going on, I think there's a way in which we need to call on everything we've got. So to think about all the different aspects of Tara together can really be helpful. And one of the reasons I say that, and I think you all are all really well aware of this, is that in the times that we are living in, we can be more aware of the suffering that's going on all over the world than human beings have ever been able to be. You can really, and if you're a person who is sensitive to that, or if you're a person who chooses to bear witness to all that, then it is really important to have this sort of grounding, centering, but also nourishing energy of Tara. And so the red Taras, and this one is no exception, there's several red Taras who are not described as being wrathful. There are wrathful red ones, but this is not one of them. So these other red Taras, their claim to fame is about giving us control or containment. So it's not really about being controlling. I think it's about being able to have a container, like a boundary, where we can tend to our own emotional states inside that boundary rather than pushing it out on the world. But I think it's also a kind of boundary where we can look at our limitations as a human being and say, you know what? I need to offer this up right now. I can't take in any more of this. And so that idea, the middle path, the whole idea of the middle path, which is, I'm not going to repress anything, I'm not going to push anything away, but I'm also not going to let anything consume me. So I think this is one of the places where the red Taras can be really helpful. And they all, if you look through the practices, they all have a little bit different way of doing it. And this one, the way she does it is really by referencing joy. And And it is this very specific joy of understanding how connected we all are. And if you look at the visualization, which I won't say the whole thing, I'll say it in a minute, but in this idea of the light purifying all these negativities and negative intentions, that the demons and the worldly gods turn to me for help with contentment and respect, and therefore come under my influence. So, you know, one of the ways I like to think about this is we really do have the capacity as human beings, and these practices emphasize that capacity. So when this Tara says, you know, she can deal with the Maras in all, whatever location they're in, that's talking about the formless realm, the subtle realm, and the realm of form. And so if what that really indicates is, as having Tara nature ourselves, that we actually have the capacity to navigate into the formless realms, into the subtle realms, and the realm of form. So one of the things I think that's hugely important is to realize that as human beings, obviously we have bodies, you know, and we have nervous systems. And those nervous systems can experience some really intense stuff as children, very intense. And so, you know, that's the place where some of this really hard negativity, this crushing, contracting energy can get hold of us, because it can trigger and clock into these old experiences that we had when we were little. If you're a person who's doing a practice, and you're also a person who's done some work on yourself, I mean, I like to think that, you know, we talk about the sacred text, but one of the sacred texts we could talk about is all the stuff we know about trauma now, all the stuff we know about attachment theory. They can be sacred texts also, right? And so if you're a person who's really paying some attention to all the various ways in which you are alive, and that sometimes that sympathetic nervous system in the realm of form is really getting a hold of us, the trick is to be deeply compassionate about that. Really truly sympathetic to that. And again, that's where kind of emptiness helps. You realize all the causes and conditions that led to that, and all the causes and conditions that might have led to your parents being the way they were, and so on and so forth, or the whole culture, whatever. So by doing these practices where, you know, ultimately the nervous system is going to settle down. And I think that happens partly because of the visualization energy. I think it happens partly because the vibrations of the mantra, happens partly because we've got these teachings in our background. And it happens partly because we're practicing in a group of people. So we're not just holding this energy by ourselves. So in the realm of practice, you know, you can tune into more subtle energies. I may have said this before, but I remember when I first started doing the wrathful deities, I kept waiting for, you know, big movements of energy. And the thing I kept feeling and seeing over and over again would be things like incredibly, almost imperceptible, gentle breezes. And so there are these really gentle, almost imperceptible, subtle energies that sometimes, you know, as we're getting quieter and quieter, you know, through the practice, you can start to feel these subtle movements. And, you know, ultimately at some point, maybe not the whole thing, but at some point can arise this real sense of spaciousness. And we can begin the process of, you know, okay, I'm a being of form, I'm also a being with a subtle body, and I also actually have a formless body. And I can identify with that way of being, and I can reside in that aspect of myself to invite this other aspect to actually come into the practice. So, this line that these, these busy little energies turn to us for help with contentment and respect and come under our influence. That for me is what that could mean. That's one thing that could mean, that these really these aspects of ourselves that are starting to feel distracted and upset and disturbed, and maybe start thinking about, a hot fudge sundae instead of doing practice, that those parts of ourselves begin to actually resonate with this subtle and spacious energy and become a little more content, and they can actually settle down. So that's one of the ways that I see this. And of course, I really invite you all to, investigate this and to see how you see it. So I'm just looking to see if there's anything else I want to say, because I know there is. Yeah, the one thing I think about a lot is, and I do think it's really interesting. So my teacher, this practice book that I use, and it's the basis of the book that I wrote, and it's the basis of our practice tonight. It says this emanation of Tara is red in color, and her expression is one of attachment. Well, that's pretty interesting. Attachment is usually like the big no-no word in Buddhism. So that word attachment just gave me the opportunity. I wanted to talk about attachment in all the ways we encounter it. And I think that, having the ability to actually really connect in a very safe and positive and trusting way with another person, a friend, a partner, a child, a teacher, an authority figure that we have a lot of respect for and might want to depend on. That ability to attach in that really positive way can get very damaged as little children. It can be very scary to let go on that level and really trust. So one of the things that it's the same as trying to remind people to be very kind to the parts of ourselves that might arise, whether we're practicing or not. But the idea that I like to think that what it means when it says Tara has an expression of attachment, it's more like her attachment is to our well-being. Her attachment is to our being able to have the joy of this openness and this ease and this relaxation. Again, like Martin Wilson said, she's our mother, right? And to begin to think that we can use the aspects of this practice, actually, I think in a real meaningful way, to begin to trust ourselves, like to begin to trust our own experience. And that would mean to trust our experience in the outer world with other people. And it would also mean to trust our experience in our practice. So that if we do have this openness or this joy or this relaxation, that we trust it. And we know it's happened once, it can happen again. And I just think it's so profoundly important that we begin to develop a sense of being able to trust trust ourselves and our own relationship to this practice. So this piece of paper just fell on the floor, which is the thing I wanted to read. This is from an article by Sharon Salzberg in Lion's Roar. It was the Lion's Roar Online from August the 10th. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but what she's really talking about is, what does happen when we're facing immense suffering about which we don't have any control. And that can be these big issues that are going on right now, but it can also remind us of suffering we had earlier that we had no control over. And so she's talking about, well, what happens in families where, as she said, discord, conflict, insecurity, violence, or maybe even illness or death is going on. And instead of family members knowing how to talk about that, she says a great silence descends. The silence of denial and avoidance. And if it's talked about, it gets repackaged and manipulated to look like something else. But it's often the case that children are well aware of what's actually going on. And this is the really important part. She says, without external affirmation of what a child feels to be true, a split arises within. A conflict between what the child is told and what they know intuitively to be true. And so children learn not to trust themselves, let alone their parents. Because of patterns like this, acknowledging the truth of suffering can be an enormous liberation for all involved. So I think that is kind of in a nutshell what I'm trying to say here, that when we have positive attachment figures and positive attachment experiences and really difficult situations arise, then that parent or that person is going to help us acknowledge what's actually going on. It gets affirmed. There's no split. There may be suffering, but you know what's going on and there's maybe some help. If you don't have that, then this conflict arises between what a child is told and what they know intuitively be true. So as we get older, it's just so important. And this gets back to what we were saying at the very beginning. It just gets to be so important that we make room for the whole, that we make room for all the suffering, and that we can actually affirm the split off parts of ourselves, and that we can rest into this amazing, vast, and spacious Tara nature as the place from which to do it. And then we can learn to trust ourselves, and we can also learn to trust other people. And more importantly, or as important, we can learn to trust the practice. And the practice is going to hold us when we choose to actually say, I'm just going to sit down with whatever is arising, and I'm going to let it be there. And I'm going to move through it and move on, not to say it won't come back, but, and just oddly enough, I think there can be so much relief from either someone else acknowledging the truth for us or we acknowledge it for ourselves, that a lot of joy can arise from that. And then we can become people who do that for other people, for all kinds of other people, especially with everything that's going on in our culture right now. So that, I think, is enough of a prelude. So I think it's a good time to practice. And I do want to say, because I always do this, if anyone would like to make a comment before we practice, feel free to do that. And you can certainly trust I'm going to ask you to do that after we practice. So, but if there's anything anyone wants to say now, you can just unmute and say it. And if you don't, we will begin our practice. So
I'll share something quick.
okay.
My name is Heather, and I hadn't been doing the Tara practice for a few months now. And this morning I was just pulled to, I have the Tara cards, to pull a card. And I pulled this card that you're talking about. And it was so appropriate for me because I've been noticing how I've been really distracted in my day-to-day life, how easily it is for me to get distracted and unfocused. And it was like, oh my God, Tara, you just came to me again. And I stayed with the mantra for a while this morning, and my morning flowed, of course, like it hadn't flowed in a long time. And then when I get on the call, and I was actually supposed to be involved with another call, but I felt drawn to come tonight. And lo and behold, this is the same card. And I think this is just wonderful because I really need this practice.
Yeah.
And it's helping me. This morning, it helped me to come into more of that awareness and centered place where I could just consciously be with the next thing and the next thing, because I have a difficult time with transitions. So I feel really grateful and joyful.
Well, Heather, I just want to thank you for summing up the entire teaching. No, that was great. And including the joy. I mean, if you look around at the faces in the little squares, there are a lot of people laughing and smiling. So that was pretty perfect. Thank you so much. And I also want to say thank you for mentioning the word transitions, because, you know, I think that's what Tara's helping us do, is make these transitions from form to subtleness to formlessness, back to subtleness, back to the form. I mean, they really are coexisting all the time. But sometimes the felt sense of moving from one to the other can be very jarring. And so I think she really helps in the transitions. I think lots of us have trouble with transitions. So I really appreciate your pointing that out. And so Heather just modeled for us this wonderful thing, which is, this is why it's important that you all speak up, because you end up saying some really fabulous stuff that we all need to hear. So thank you, Heather. I appreciate that. So the rest of you are going to get your chance, like it or not, after we finish practicing. So anyway, yeah, you know, maybe even to take a moment right now just to feel the joy of being together. You know, even though these are really difficult times, and we often practice through difficult things, there really can be a lot of joy, and a lot of joy in the community. So as we kind of enter the space of the sadhana, you know, if you notice anything, any joy bubbling around, you know, just take it in and really receive it and enjoy it. So here now we make this shift from this sense of a more outer conversation and engagement, and drop into more of a sense of what's inward. And for people who haven't practiced with us before, I just lead this, and when we get to the point, I really do ask people to stay muted, but still please read the praise together. And then we'll chant the mantra 108 times, and then we'll rest in silence and space to see whatever really can arise within ourselves from having done the practice. And then I'll bring it to a close and we'll dedicate the merit. So you know, once again, you can sort of refresh the feeling of support, you know, to tune into all the places and spaces in all realms where you feel support. And as you tune into those places and spaces, see if you can actually attune to the energy of that support and actively receive it. And just appreciate your breath, your natural breathing. You don't need to change anything. And then to allow this image of space arise in your mind's eye. And excuse me, that would be whatever image of space, when you think of it, just helps you to relax and touch into the spaciousness of your own awakened consciousness, because our consciousness really is as vast as space. And so we always start with that image, whichever one is most beautiful and meaningful to you. This vast space which contains everything resting in potential. And out of all that potential, we're going to imagine and invite the entire mandala of Tara, with green Tara in the center, and you can see her specifically behind me. And then on this other Tonka is green Tara with all the 21 around her, if that's helpful to you. And also, you know, just to relax into whatever it means to you. You may not be a great visualizer, that's okay. You can still sense the energy, you know, the colors and the gestures. So we just imagine the whole mandala of Tara coming into this form with green Tara and all her 21 emanations appearing in subtle bodies of light. Of course, Tara in the middle is a subtle body of green light. And so to really get this sense of all the 21 emanations being here, and then to think about your teachers and guards and guides and helpful ancestors, your lineage teachers, whoever are your circle of care, you could call them that their teachings for you, their influence on you, their love for you is part of why you can even be here tonight, no matter what tradition they come from. To just imagine they're here. And also all these lineages, you know, think about our Sangha, all the Sanghas that we belong to, and all the Sanghas of the history of practitioners, which goes back really, you know, even prior to Buddhism, this stuff had its roots. So this goes back for thousands of years. So, and to think of yourself also as being surrounded by your friends and loved ones and supporters, and then they are surrounded by their friends and loved ones and supporters. So ultimately, we're inviting this infinite number of beings to come and participate, all kinds of beings. And then to imagine that you can place at Tara's feet, and we really have done that by putting these things in the chat box and also mentioning some of them, the really big, incredible amount of suffering that's going on all over the world, but also maybe particular friends or loved ones. And don't forget yourself, you know, if there's something you really need help with. Let's just imagine that we can place all these cares and concerns and beings right at Tara's feet in the center of this mandala. And then to think and feel that with all these beings and for all these beings, that we can take refuge in Tara's fully awakened consciousness, which is also, we have that too. It's not fully awakened, but we still have it. We can take refuge in Tara's fully awakened consciousness and all the great wisdom teachings, the oral teachings, the texts, the things that have really meant something to us from all traditions. And again, we can take refuge in our sanghas and the ancestral sanghas as well. And to think of the earth and the wonderful space and silence. And ourselves as a awakening Buddha to be. So we can take refuge in all of these things. And then we ask that through the power of giving and the other perfections that we could wake up 100% in order to be of benefit to all living beings. And we really pray that all living beings might have happiness and the causes of happiness, which is like the supreme joy, that all beings would be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow, that all beings might come to ultimately realize we cannot be separated from the sacred happiness, which is sorrowless, and that we might live in equanimity without too much attachment for those we hold close or too much aversion for those we keep at a distance. That we could live in equanimity, we could live believing in the equality of all that lives. Om Sabhavashita Sarva Dharma Sabhavashito. And so now we really imagine this tent, this emanation of Tara, the red influential Tara, this Tara with a profound sense of humor, is coming into the foreground. Also in this red body of subtle light, subtle body of red light. And to think she's got this expression of concern and attachment and care, like she really cares what happens to us. And she's dressed in these beautiful silks and jewels, and her top 3 chakras are adorned with the syllables Om Aham. And then the blue syllable hum begins to radiate blue light. And we're really imagining these beings now in our realm, or we're in their realm. This blue light is coming from her heart and going out into the realm of the wisdom beings and initiatory deities and inviting them to come here. Ahehi Sahum Bamho. So this ancient sadhana basically says, look, because they promise to come when we ask them to, they will come. And so we just take a moment to try to feel the presence of all these awakened beings and to feel the subtle energies of Tara and all her emanations really fully taking hold inside of this visualization. And to really feel that they are here, the Buddhas, the awakened ones, the beings of their mandalas, the dakinis. And then we ask the awakened ones for purification. Om Sarva Tathagata Avashit Samam. So this is actually a really wonderful opportunity. For any of you who've done any kind of energy work, this is really like, we're going to imagine that these dakinis, there are lots of them and they're white. Each one of them is carrying a white vase. And as we've asked for purification, we're going to imagine that one of the dakinis is pouring this substance into our open crown chakra. And it's fluid. It's really like liquid light. And the idea is not, oh, we're nasty and we need to be purified. It's more like, oh my gosh, what have we encountered? How did we react to it? What kind of difficult energies have been stirred up? What could be stuck in our, energy channels? And that can be from this afternoon or last week or, 40 years ago. So, or maybe in another life, who knows? But to imagine just in this moment, to see if you can have some kind of aesthetic sense of like a river of light just pouring through you as a benefit, as a help. And that as it flows through you, even you could even imagine if you've got, a sore joint or a headache or whatever, just imagine whatever, wherever you might need it, your heart, anything, just imagine that light is just flowing through you and pulling out any kind of energetic residue that could be difficult or harmful or certainly not needed. And just imagine that it flows through you and leaves out through the lower doors, and it takes all that sticky stuff with it, however you want to imagine that. And just try to sense that, and again, as a form of support. And then we imagine one of these dakinis is pouring the same nectar into the open crown chakra of red Tara. This one little drop overflows and forms the Buddha Amitabha, the Buddha of infinite light, who also appears in a subtle body of red light just above her head. And this is a place where I like to invite all of us to make what I call personal offerings to Tara. So, we can really offer her everything, like all of our concerns. We can offer her our frustrations and anger, but we can also offer her our joy. If there was some piece of work or something you accomplished that you're really happy about, you can offer her that. If there's something you're hoping to accomplish, you really want to bring something to fruition, you can offer her that. You can offer her anything. This red influential Tara. And just imagine that she is completely delighted. This is her job. She knows how to do it. She's better at this than we are, transforming things. So just imagine you can offer her anything you want to, and that she happily takes it, and that she transforms it into some kind of wisdom blessing, and that she just showers this blessing over us, maybe gives us insight into what all this is about, really with the idea we might be able to pass this blessing along to the next person we come in contact with. And so we just take a moment to let ourselves feel blessed by Tara's ability to give back to us the stuff of our own life in this very usable form. Om Bensam Rita Kundali, Hana Hana Hampe, Om Savavashuddha Sarva Dharma Savavashuddhoham. So here we're calling on our friend, the wrathful deity Amrita Kundali. He functions like Ganesh in Hinduism. He's the remover of all obstacles. So we're going to ask him to just remove any obstacles to our practice, and that can be our practice tonight or anytime. And we all have different kinds of practices. So even doing a kind deed in the world is a practice. So to imagine that this fantastic being can just remove all the obstacles to any of our practices, and just see that happening. Imagine that happening any way that you want. They say he's dark blue and very wrathful, and you can toss stuff out there for him too, like, whoa, let me hand this one over to you. And then he just gobbles it up, clears away the obstacle, and dissolves back into our heart chakra, where he remains as a protector. And then just very briefly, we revisit this image of space sense of space, we imagine the syllable Om, the syllable of awakened consciousness, that it's really actually is reverberating through space and matter all the time. And as it's doing that, it's creating these beautiful jeweled vessels, these very large, beautiful jeweled vessels. Each one has an Om inside of it. And now from these vessels are pouring the traditional offering substances, water, food, music, incense, candles, flowers. It's like a banquet for Tara and all the Buddhas and all the beings. These wonderful, you can use your imagination to just offer as many beautiful things as you can imagine, actually. And that they're pouring out of these vessels, clear, unhindered, and unending. Om Aham, Om Aham, Om Aham. And in Sanskrit, that's Om Aryatara, Sapariwara, Argam, Pajam, Puspe, Dupe, Alake, Ganje, Navaje, Shabda, Pratitse, Soha. So if you would, even though you're muted, and if you want to, read the praise together. I praise the one who spreads the supreme joy and garlands of the light which shine from her diadem, who burst out laughing with a joyous exclamation Chitari, placing the demons and worldly gods under her power. And so now we're going to visualize or sense, depending on what works best for you, that from Tara's heart and also this face in her right hand, that these dark red rays of light are streaming out, and it purifies all negativities and any ill will and negative intentions of the Maras and Tirtakas. We'll talk more about them later, what they are, and all other beings. Just to imagine that any being that has any negative intention towards us or our practice actually calms down, and that they turn to us for help with contentment and respect, and therefore they come under our influence. And I want to say again, that's really coming under the influence of our very own Tara nature. They can feel that there's a lot more joy in that than whatever they might have been up to before. So to, visualize that in whatever way that you can do, and kind of just relax and enjoy this. And so I really invite you, if you can and want to chant the mantra again, stay on mute, but chant the mantra. And if it really works best for you to just relax and listen to it, just do what is really going to allow the vibrations of the mantra to really sink in. Om Tari Tu Sora Marla Kavasham Kursoha. 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 Om Tari Tari Sora Marlika Vasham 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 Kursoha. Om Tari Tu Tari Tur Sora Marla Gavashan Kur Soha. Om Tari Tu Tari Tur Sora Marla Gavashan Kur Soha. Om Tari Tu Tari Tur Sora Marla Gavashan Kur Soha. Om Tari Tu Tari Tur Sora Marla Gavashan Kur Soha. Om Tari Tu Tari Tur Sora Marla Gavashan Kur Soha. Om Tari Tu Tari Tur Sora Marla Gavashan Kur Soha. Om Tari Tu Tari Tur Sora Marla Gavashan Kur Soha. Om Tari Tu Tari Tur Sora Marla Gavashan Kur Soha. Om Tari Tu Tari Tur Sora Marla Gavashan Kur Soha. Om Tari Tu Tari Tur Sora Marla Gavashan Kur Soha. Om Tari Tu Tari Tur Sora Marla Gavashan Kur Soha. Om Tari Tu Tari Tur Sora Marla Gavashan Kur Soha. Om Tari Tu Tari Tur Sora Marla Gavashan Kur Soha. Om Tari Tu Tari Tur Sora Marla Gavashan Kur Soha. Om Tari Tu Tari Tur Sora Marla Gavashan Kur Soha. Om Tari Tu Tari Tur Sora Marla Gavashan Kur Soha. Om Tari Tu Tari Tur Sora Marla Gavashan Kur Soha. Om Tari Tu Tari Tur Sora Marla Gavashan Kur Soha. So the image that's coming into my mind is to suggest, just imagine that as you're looking at this red Tara, not that far from you, kind of right at the level of your forehead, a few feet away. And all this light that has the capacity to just dissipate any kind of negativity. And that it does it in such a way that it brings some kind of contentment to beings that actually don't experience much contentment. They're too busy stirring things up. But to imagine that your being is just filled up with this light, and that you can just rest in that. It's like resting in awareness, having some kind of ability to allow everything and still rest. It's like, even the part of us that think, hey, what is this all about anyway? This is weird or whatever, just I think about children going to church, what in the world are they thinking, right? Or feeling that we can just rest in this vast space of light and restorative energy. And even the stuff that comes along, these vestiges of, say, not being able to trust, if they kind of show up, just say, that's fine. You got a place at the table too. And the image of literally being able to just rest sometimes, whether it's if you have a porch or you have a favorite chair, that one can just really rest in this energy of contentment and the release and relief that humor can bring, and the relief that can come from just allowing whatever to be there is there. And we don't have to do anything about it. We can really rest in this vast space of awareness that Tara actually embodies and represents for us. And so, yeah, I hope that might be sort of an imprint that can sink in, that you can call on in the next few weeks. This idea of, hey, I can let these things calm down and let Tara take care of that, and actually I can rest back into this space of vast awareness and enjoy a laugh or two here and there. And so you can also send that wish out for everybody, actually, that people find those places and spaces to do that. And so now we imagine that red Tara is receding back into the mandala, back into her place in the mandala, which would actually be on our left-hand side, up near the top to the left of the green Tara. Just imagine her taking her place in the whole mandala, looking at that one more time. All these beautiful female Buddhas in these subtle bodies of light. And then we thank all the beings who came to be with us in the practice and the teachers that came to support the practice. And we invite them to go back to whatever realms that they came from. And we imagine them doing that they are going back. And we leave space for that to happen. And then next, we're going to imagine this entire mandala of Tara is dissolving into light. And that light is showering out into the universe, literally, into every place on this planet that we would like to send it, and also out into the universe, and also into our own homes, into our own hearts and our own bodies, or our precious animals and plants, whatever. We just can imagine this light pouring out into the universe and into us and all of our surroundings. And then we're left with space again, which is actually fabulous. It's where we started. And it's really big, and it's big enough for us and everything we want to bring to it. And so we dedicate the merit of this practice, that whatever goodness, whatever healing, whatever positive potential has come from our joining together and doing this practice together, we dedicate it towards the healing and awakening of all beings everywhere, with absolutely no exceptions. And we just give thanks for the teachers and the teachings and Tara and our own good hearts and whatever it was that got us to come here tonight and be together. Yeah, we just give thanks for each other and the practice and Tara and the teachers. And yeah. So I will say, for those of you who have, well, maybe all computers do this. I did turn my phone off, but I still, this text came through from a friend of mine who's at the beach, and it's an image of the moon shining on the water. And so the title of the text is Moonlight, which is actually the English translation of the Tibetan name my teacher gave me many, many years ago. So that was kind of fun. Speaking of joy. So I'm curious what's come up for people. Like, what do you want to share with us? And please imagine that we need to hear it. And all you need to do is unmute and say what you want to say.
I'd like to share something.
Okay.
One thing that came to me was, I can't remember if it was the Dalai Lama or Thich Nhat Hanh. I don't remember which one, some great, highly enlightened creature on this earth plane, but said that, this thing about where there is no humor, there's attachment.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so if you're in a situation and you've lost all humor, like you cannot laugh, you are attached in that moment. And that is another indicator that there will be suffering, right? Where there's attachment. And then earlier, I also thought that Tara and any of her manifestation is realized. And so I would imagine that she's like incapable of any kind of negative form of attachment or unhealthy form of attachment. She can only have the type of attachment that is pure love, unconditional, open door, big heart attachment, like the kind that we're supposed to have when we love somebody,
Yeah. And I think it's the kind we really want to have too.
Yeah. And that we're capable of having.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we suffer because I think inherently, because we really do exist on all these levels all the time, that when we're not feeling, when we are feeling kind of that clinging sensation, that's never really all that pleasant. And it's not like, oh yeah, we're bad practitioners. It's just, oh, this is not any fun. So thank you for that. I love that.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for this incredibly timely practice. My grandfather, who to me, I think he passed in 2019, but he exhibited so many bodhisattva qualities that he is in my circle of ancestral care. But one of the things I always remember about him is how he never hurried.
Oh.
And he always stopped for people. And so as a child, I didn't really understand why I found him so much easier to be around than other people. But all of these little characteristics of his and literally the word transitions has been like resonating in my head, because right now I am spending time with a 3-year-old who, you know, who is just a being of pure light and joy. And what we were saying earlier about how we don't handle transitions well is one of the things that's been coming up, because she actually really needs good transitions from task to task, so we can, like, we can all be drawn along to the next easy thing that needs to get done. And there's just so much to distract and worry and frustrate us in the world, that sometimes we focus so much on just getting things done that we don't see that sometimes someone little needs to be brought along. And giving that beat, that pause, is just creates that sense of, I don't know, it just makes things more fun, even if it's like as mundane as like having to brush teeth or like, get ready for bed. And in this time, I'm just sitting with there's so many hard things in the world, but how can I show up for the folks that really need me? And so I'm sitting with my need for transitions and their need for transitions.
Thank you. That's beautiful. If you guys know the Winnicott, who talked about, had this concept called alone in the presence of the mother. So it's in that sort of 2 to 3-year-old range where the child needed to be away from the mother, but as long as he knew the mother or she knew the mother was in the next room, she would be okay. And that they would have a transitional object, a bunny or a blanket or something. And that in that transitional space where the mother's not hovering, but the mother's still there, it's an incredibly creative space. And I like to think of Tara as sort of you can think of her as a transitional object, or the mother who's creating that good enough mother who's right in the same room actually, but is kind of giving us the freedom to play, right, and to be creative. So that's what your comments remind me of, Janani. And well, that's really beautiful about your grandfather. And I also thought, listening you talk, wouldn't it be wonderful if we did that with the child inside of ourselves, right? If we just slowed down and said, oh, what do you need to get to the next thing? Anyway, so thank you so much for that. That's really beautiful. So Shelley put something in the chat box about this seminar I'm going to do September 21st. Of course, it will be about Tara, which also reminds me to say, I am taking the entire month of September off. So we will not be meeting next month. I'm kind of sorry to say, because I really enjoy this. But I think a person needs to know how to take a break from things. So I'm taking a break from work. Thank you, Allison. But this seminar with the Infinity Foundation, I agreed to that like 8 months ago, so I can't really do anything about that. And I will, I know I don't send out many newsletters because I don't know that people want a whole lot of stuff in their inbox, but you will, if you're on my mailing list, you'll get an announcement about that. And it will be all Tara all the time. Some of it you've heard, hopefully some of it you haven't, so there'll be something new. And again, I still want to see if there's a few more things other people want to say, but I do want to take this moment because in my little black box, I can see all 3 of our tech hosts. I can see Deanna and Mary and Karen. And if you want to talk about, yeah, thank you. If you want Talking about, oh, an easy practice of gratitude, man. I just have to look at the three of you and it's like, bingo. So thank you for doing this for all of us, actually. Yeah. So who else? Yeah, Elizabeth? You have to unmute.
Okay.
There you
Hear
go.
me now?
Yeah.
Okay. First off, I'll just say along the lines of gratitude. Yes, thank you for your tech support, people. I run meetings, and it's often not very easy to find people that want to donate their time. So thank you. I also just want to say on the gratitude channel that I have been really thoroughly, like, majorly blessed with a human being from Italy. And she is going to college here in San Jose State University. And if you've ever traveled to Italy, or if you haven't, I'll just say one word. It's like ultimate reflection of the best and highest qualities of water in a human. And her name happens to be Greta. So I tease her. I'm like, gratitude. We all have gratitude. But we just had this gratitude fest. And I was like, yes, you are here for us all, to show us how to be more like this Tara. What she emanates this contentment, like that clear, calm water with weight. And it connected me to that feeling that I had at the end, through this meditation, and how it kind of brought me to that calm sense of contentment. And it's like, okay, I won't forget this.
Good.
I think, we have to remember that our water we have so much memory in our body. And I think, more on the lines of, like, just like as much of the negative that we have the memory, we have a memory of positives too. And so I just help everyone around me remind them that there's more positive in each of us than negative. And this practice really supports that. And I am so grateful, Rachel. And I'm so grateful for my whole life leading up to this moment. And it's really a joy. So, and I've missed your practice live because of work, and that was fine too, but I'm still practicing. So
Okay. Well, keep it up. And all these recordings are on my website. So if you guys are inspired to go back and revisit any of them, they're there.
I'd love to say something.
Go ahead, Shayla.
I think you have really strongly some of the qualities of Red Tara, because you're very good at lightness and laughing at yourself. I noticed that from the very beginning, and how healing that is. And I think I've been involved all week with an Afghani woman in one of my fields who we've been trying to pull out of Kabul. Wow. And it's been so incredibly stressful, and I could feel I was losing it, and when you described the qualities of Red Tara, and I felt them come into my body and into these really sore, tender places in my heart, because I was tuning into the Afghani women and what they've been through for generations. It's unimaginable what they've passed through. But I could feel those particular qualities as you mentioned them, like the containing, and the, I'm just one little tiny, I'm not the heroic rescuer. I can't be that one. That's not going to help anyone to take that on, in that way. So I feel really grateful.
Well, it does sound like you are being the heroic person for this one person, which is fantastic.
Well, a whole group of us managed to get her to the airport in response to a call from an emergency place in the US. But even once she got to the airport, it's very you don't know if you're going to get on a plane just because you get to that airport, you know. So there's also something, it feels like the Taras are going to be more and more necessary.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Thank you for telling us about that.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Have a beautiful rest.
Thank you.
I love to feel that you're doing that.
I'll let you know if it works. Everybody's saying, and yeah, my son-in-law is, and what are you going to fill that time with? I'm going to appoint him the guardian or something. Anyway, oh gosh. Well, I guess it's time to sign off. If anybody else wants to say anything before we leave.
I have one little thing to say.
Okay.
It's a little show and tell.
Okay.
I just want to say what really resonated with me was that sense of deep rest inside. And anyway, my 95-year-old father is very hard of hearing, and I bought him an alarm clock, but it's one that wakes you up with light instead of sound.
Yeah.
It ended up being too complicated for him to use. So anyway, I want to kind of show you my light, because if I can show, I don't know if the color is coming through. Oh, drat.
Oh, there you go. Oh my gosh.
Okay, so this one is, well, the colors aren't coming through really great, but anyway, I see it all day when I'm passing in the hall, and whatever Tara we're on, like last month was white Tara, I had it on white, and then it can go to green, yeah, or red, or green, or golden, or purple I use for the black. And anyway, or it can strobe through the colors. But as I'm walking by, I'll practice in the morning, then as I'm walking by during the day, it'll be just kind of like a visual mnemonic for me to remember which Tara. So I just, red Tara is there for it. So anyway, it brings me a little bit of joy during my day. So I just wanted to share.
That's so creative. I love it. Thank you.
So you're welcome. Yeah. Thank you for everything.
So somebody is asking, we'll be practicing in October. We will be. And, as we say in the South, God willing and the creek don't rise. What we've been doing here for years and years is we just go through to the 21 and then we start over again with 1. So, as long as we're all here and the energy's here and whatever, we should just keep on doing it, because we need as much Tara as we can get. We need all the help we can get from anywhere we can get it from. I mean, one of the things that's so fabulous about practicing together, imagine like when we were doing the practice, there are like 45 people on the call. So that means there are 45 circles of care. So let's say there are an average of 5 people, that's 5 times 40. We're just inviting a lot of beings. And so I just really wish you all a good couple of months, and I'll let you know how it goes. Maybe y'all can imagine me actually resting. That would be fun. There must be a restful Tara. They're all restful, actually. So
I will just picture you in a hammock.
All right.
Resting.
Thank you.
Surrounded by the Taras.
Sounds like a plan.
I pictured you on a gentle stream, just in a canoe, or just gently floating under the trees with all the birds, and
I'm just imagining someone else paddling the canoe. Anyway.
Just floating with the tide.
Floating.
You're not paddling, you're just in it resting. Yeah.
Okay, folks, please take care of yourselves and